Okay, so metallic. The description of metallic being metallic is actually a little misleading, because this parameter defines how metallic the material is not, as well as how metallic it is. So this parameter defines many material types. Wood, everything, plants, cloth. This parameter defines the material more than any of the others. Along with metallic, you have a subcontroller called smoothness. Now, that's not a bad description for what it does, because it actually describes how smooth it is. From being as dull as chalk to as smooth and reflective as a mirror. You can control both metallic and smoothness using sliders if you have no texture maps, or you can assign a map to both. Only the red channel is used for metallic. Green is unused, and so is blue, so they're blank and a bit of a waste if you ask me, but they'll probably use them for something in the future. And the alpha channel of the texture map is used for the smoothness of the material. The smoothness parameter is where a lot of the sort of creativity can come in, especially if you use a texture map, because it means you can put scratches on the surface, really go to town on what the surface, give it some age, tell a story using the using the smoothness and scratchiness of of a surface of a material or an object. So this metallic parameter is really important and tells you a lot, if not pretty much everything about the material and what it is. Like I said, in smoothness, white is ultra glossy, mirror-like, and can reflect the environment, and black is dull as chalk. So let's go and take a look at it in Unity, where I think it will be a lot clearer as to what metallic actually does. So we're back to our scene, and you can see we've still got the dull looking floor. Now my metallic texture is here. I've deliberately taken out the blue and the green channels. I've made it black in both of those channels. I've left the brightness in the red channel only, and it is quite bright, because you can see that's nearly full red, and that's telling the shader that this material is very metallic. There's a lot of argument online about we shouldn't use grey values within the metallic. It should be white, which is full metallic, or it should be black, which is not metallic. So it's either metallic or it's not. But I'm not entirely in agreement with that, because what if you've got a bit of dust on the metal? It's still metal, and you want, it's a little bit duller than what it would be. I just think there's scope there for some creativity. So really, it's up to you. So our metallic value here, it's got two sliders. Now I haven't put in any material now, so I can tell the engine that this is metallic just by taking my slider up. If I take it up to 1, I'm telling the engine that it's fully metallic. I'm also telling it, because the smoothness is down, that it's really, really rough. So it's not going to be reflective or shiny in any way, because it's so rough that the light is just getting absorbed into the material. So if I gradually take this up, I'll put it in such a way that we can see the light coming through. Now I can slowly turn it up, and you can see the smoother it gets, sort of more glossy and shiny the material becomes, which is fine. And that looks quite nice, but that's not what I want. I wanted rusty bits, damaged bits of metal and all that. So I'm going to use my bitmap to define metal, rather than using these sliders here to tell Unity that it's metal. So I'm going to take these down first. The moment I drop in a bitmap into this metallic parameter here into this metallic box, the shader knows to use that and not to use this slider, and that slider, the metallic one, would disappear. In Unity's instructions it says the smoothness one disappears also, but it doesn't. So let's do this. Let's put this metal texture map into the metal slot, into the metallic slot, like that. And now it's doing the job of the slider, but we've got a lot more definition, because if I look at this texture map again, in the alpha channel I've got my smoothness values, and the darker patches is where I'm saying to the shader, that's not metal, that's not shiny. And the lighter values, I'm saying, yeah, this is quite shiny, I want it to be metal looking. If you look closely now, my rusty parts are dull and they're not reflective, whereas the white parts and the metal parts are still behaving like metal, although it's not that great. Still, it's okay. It's doing what I want it to do, but I think we can get a lot more definition out of that when we start using the normal map. You'll see what I mean. So just to clarify some other things, these balls, I've set them all up, and I've set them up with real world values for different metals. Now the two on the end here are iron, and I've done two very specifically, and you'll see in a moment why I have two. Further along we have copper. Now I've put in the real world values for copper into the RGB values, and Unity will render it correctly because I've told it that copper is a metal, so that's on full 1, and I've given it a smoothness value. I'm not 100% sure what the smoothness values of the metals are, but you can define what they are yourself. Like if it's all the way up, like we said, it's ultra shiny, and you can see it's reflecting the surface quite nicely in there. But copper's not like that. It really isn't. So we bring that down to a 0.8 or 0.7 because metal has, it is not smooth. If you look online at different metals, you get a good idea. Let's go and look online. Okay, so here's a search in Google for copper. Now you can see in its natural form, which is like this and like this over here, it's not shiny at all. But when it's all it's all piped up and polished, it looks pretty good and pretty shiny. So our copper, you can change the smoothness value depending on what the surface of your object is like. I mean, look at these here. They're not particularly shiny. They're quite dull, in fact, and that the surface of those are quite rough. So I mean, copper wire, it's not glossy, is it? So so that's what the smoothness does. Whereas these are very shiny. I mean, so you can determine how shiny it is. I mean, look at that, for example. That's copper. It doesn't really look like copper, but because it's so old, this is where the smoothness texture map comes in, the black and white, and you can define bits of it as being shiny, bits of it being dull, just like it's got it in these images here. Well, they're just all dull. So when if you're doing a game where you're collecting, like Uncharted, for example, you won't get shiny copper. You'll get this sort of copper with artifacts which are really dated, and this is what you can use the smoothness value for, to bring it down, and even the metal to some degree. So you can change, bring the value of the copper down because it's so old and worn. But it can still be copper. If, using the albedo color, like I described before, you can get the correct, real life color of copper, which is what I've done in here. And you can then apply and use that as a base, and on top of it start building up your material and apply all the dirt and the grime, and then use your smoothness value to define how shiny it is. And in that case, it's not very shiny. So it's quite a powerful tool, the metallic albedo and smoothness values. Yeah, so that's, if you look at gold, let's type in gold. Now these, I think, are just generated images. That's not a real picture, I don't believe. So, but you can see how glossy and shiny that is. Whereas if you look at a real bar of gold, it looks more like that. Or like, look at the surface of that. It's not as shiny and mirror-like as we're led to believe in the movies, if you like. But again, gold is not shiny when you get it out of the ground, or at this state it's pitted and it's not shiny. So you can modify the look of gold using the material, using the metallic values and the smoothness. And of course you have to get the correct gold color value from real world measurements, and they do measure the colors of these things, and you can go online and find them, which is what I did when I created these, and then build on top of it. Look at that. If you wanted that sort of gold, you'd have to make it pretty rough using the smoothness value. So okay, so the reason why I've got two iron values over here, so sorry, just to carry on, there's lots of different material types. Got cobalt, chromium, nickel, titanium, and you can see they're all metal and they've all got a very slightly different look. And that's aluminium, silver, and the two iron, that's iron and that's iron. So what I did with this as an experiment more than anything, I set up these two iron balls, if you like. One I used, so one I used just using the value, the color value, which is this one here. I've got the correct color value. I just put the color in, and then I adjusted the smoothness, and that is actually iron, although the smoothness could be anything, depending on what sort of iron it is. And this one here I used a map. So if you look down here, I used the iron albedo, which is exactly the same color. So that's a map. It's a very small map. It's only 128 by 128, but still it works. So I used a map, texture map, with exactly the same color on it as this one here. Where's the map gone? Yes, I used a map, and the alpha channel I put in my smoothness, and I want it to be ultra smooth because, well, not glossy, but the same value as I put in that. So I just put the same percentage grey value in the alpha channel as I applied to my color on my color version, and you can see they're exactly the same. So both systems work, but the benefit of having metallic as a map is this box. And this is one texture I've used, and you can see, I've got some really odd lights just dotted around so I can see. This is clearly metal and shiny and nice. And around the side here we've got some wood, which is not shiny nice, and it actually looks like wood. And what I've done there is I've used a texture map to define my albedo. So my albedo's got all the colours in it, and you can see there's no lighting values or shadows or anything in that albedo there. And I've used my material to say this is not metal, i.e. it's wood, and this is metal. These stripes here is my dodgy painting. I made this box in approximately 3 minutes. I just went on and just painted metal, paint in substance, and just did it really quick as an example. So that's what these grey streaks are. Yeah, so the white is the metal bits, which is these bits here, and the black is the wood, which are these bits here. So you can see the benefits of having metallic texture maps is that you can have different material types defined within it, which is pretty cool. And obviously this has got a smoothness in its alpha as well to tell it what's smooth and what's shiny and what's not. See, I mean the white here is shiny, and the black and the grey here is not. And this grey patch here is this here, which is slightly more shiny, although you can't really see it because there's no light shining it, than this here. So two different types of wood, one slightly shinier than the other, but that's represented in the smoothness map by the grey and the black areas, and the ultra shiny glossy metal looking substance here is the white in the smoothness alpha. So that's the benefit of using maps instead of the sliders. So it's a pretty powerful system. In fact, it's very powerful, and you could create any sort of material you want. You can see I've got the normal map turned on there, and that's what we're going to cover next. So let's move on and look at the normal map.